From the OUTV Broadcast Center in Los Angeles, California, this is Brief News Brief, a brief look at today's trending news topics, proudly combating the thought police since 2016. Here's your host, James Heaney.
I'm James Heaney, and this here is Brief News Brief. This morning, Sean Spicer was asked if the public could please know what Donald Trump personally believes about the science of climate change, to which his response was, I don't know what the president believes about global warming. Really, Sean? You expect us to believe you've never had this conversation with Trump? You've never been like, okay, well, this is our political position, but what do you really think? Do you think global warming could end the world? I know that conversation has happened at least once. Don't lie to me! But this follows the day after Donald Trump officially announced his intention to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which puts into question America's role as a leader of the free world. The Paris Climate Agreement was spearheaded by former President Barack Obama after years of negotiations, and it was just finalized last fall. Obama was able to bring every country to the table except for two, one of them being Syria, which was torn apart at the moment and still is by a civil war, and Nicaragua, who refused to join because all of the commitments in the agreement were voluntary. They didn't want to be in it because it was only voluntary. Mandatory only, please. Trump says he wants to bring everyone to the table to renegotiate. That is actually just a bunch of businessman posturing. The only person we're negotiating with is ourselves. There's no country that's going to come to the table to talk with Trump about this, so there's no negotiating to do. The CO2 emissions goals are self-imposed and self-regulated. You don't need to pull out of the climate agreement to just dial it back. And I'm not saying we should dial it back, but I'm saying you're just posing by doing this. We can change them anytime we want. Get ready for your brief news briefing. Steve Bannon is reportedly feeling awesome. This is a result of Jared Kushner's Trump influence receding in the wake of the recent Russian scandals. They're tarnishing Jared's reputation, and Bannon is winning. And we're all losing, America. Next Thursday, James Comey is scheduled to publicly testify before Congress, although Donald Trump could exercise executive privilege to block it. But think about it. If he blocks Comey from testifying, we're all going to know that he did something illegal. But I guess if he doesn't block him, we're all going to know he did something illegal. The Trump administration is moving to return 2 diplomatic compounds from the U.S. to Russia that Obama evicted officials from in late December as punishment for the interference in the 2016 election. There were 35 Russian intelligence operatives working from those compounds that were expelled. Late Thursday night, the Trump Muslim ban reached the Supreme Court in the form of 3 urgent requests from the Justice Department. The court will probably vote to hear the appeal, and we'll get to hear final words on that. Putin, who from now on I'd rather call Pewty, I'm going to call him Pewty, I just think it sounds silly. Never mind. Putin is pushing back on claims that Russia interfered with the U.S. elections, chucking it up to mere hysteria. He mocked the moderator Megyn Kelly, saying, "Isn't there a pill you can take for that?" He wishes there was a pill we could take to forget all of this. Megyn's interview with Putin airs Sunday night. And most importantly, today, June 2nd, is my mother's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. And now it's your time to chime. Last week, in Montana, somebody body slammed a reporter and they were running for office. We asked, should someone who's committed a felony, which I didn't say violent, I should have said violent, should someone who has committed a violent felony be allowed to run for public service? And the conversation that took place on Facebook is below. You can see without last names what people said. I'm going to just generally give it a synopsis, okay? Pablo says, he who commits a violent felony should not be allowed to run for public service, but the rule, what should happen is we should simply not vote for this person, and that would keep them from being elected into the, and I think that's a good point of view. I think it's right. I would say that if a violent felon cannot vote, I think it should be equally the law that you cannot vote for a violent felon. But then he brings up something even more important that I was taken aback with that I hadn't thought of first. I was so emotional at the moment. I can't help it. I'm an emotional guy. And he says, keep in mind, he hasn't been convicted yet. And that's true. That is true. He hasn't been convicted, and I know in my heart I believe he's guilty, but I can believe he's guilty till the sun falls into the sea. It doesn't matter what I believe. He deserves a fair trial, and if he's not convicted, whether I like it or not, then he should be able to run for public service. And since he has not been convicted, then it's not right for me to try to take that right from him before he has gone through the due process, right? But in a completely different point of view, Bob says, this violent felon running for, it depends on who they violently assaulted. And at first, I was like, yeah, man, it depends on who. If you violently assault them, I was like, you know what? No matter how bad somebody is, you really just shouldn't assault them, period. Because violence doesn't decide who's right and wrong. And unless I'm a hypocrite, I have to draw that line. Okay? And on top of that, it's simply the law. If you get in trouble for that, you should, we have laws for a reason, and it sets a guideline. I don't want to break that. And then Bob's response was, he believes everything that Brief News Brief posts, and he would assault anyone that Brief News Brief wants. And then Brief News Brief responded, which I don't know who was typing for Brief News Brief. It's not me. It's one of the many people that work for Brief News Brief. They replied, Bob, we need to have a back channel. Now, they probably just wanted to talk about completely innocent things. You don't want to have all conversations in the public eye of Facebook. But Bob then responded saying he needs to check the statute of limitations on a couple things, but he's pretty sure that they ran out about 22 years ago. So that wraps it up. This week, we want to ask you, what do you think? Okay, are you ready for it? Because I'm not. Hold on one second. I want to know, why do you think some people do not believe in global warming? What is the cause of having such a different belief than me? Which I believe my belief is right. So I believe my belief is fact. But why do you think some people don't believe in global warming?